אשא עיני אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי מעם אדוני, עושה שמים וארץ. אל ייתן למוט רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל. אדוני שמרך, אדוני צילך על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. אדוני ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד
I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? The source of my help is the Lord, creator of heaven and earth. He will not let you falter. He is at your right hand to protect you. Lord will guard you from harm, will preserve your soul, will guard your going and coming from this time forth and forever. L'kol zman, ve'et l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim, et laledet ve'et lamut, et latat ve'et lakur natua. A season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time for planting and a time for reaping, a time for keeping and a time for giving away. Et lachbog ve'et l'rchok mechabek, et levakesh ve'et la'abed, et lishmor ve'et lashlich, et likro ve'et litfor, et lachshot ve'et ledaber. A time for embracing and a time for refraining, a time for laughing and a time for weeping, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. Yibbono Shalom, Almighty God, send comfort to the family of Ida Fienberg, who mourn her passing so deeply. Feeling a sense of loss, help them focus on the accomplishment, the joy, the goodness, the vitality in Ida's life. Help them meet grief with courage, to face sorrow undaunted, to treasure what is theirs, because their beloved Chaya, their Ida, has lived. Should despair threaten, their faith falter, sustain us all, O God. You are our refuge and strength, our ever-present help in troubled times. I'm honored now to indicate the family members who will be speaking in honor and in memory of Ida Fienberg. First will be her nephew Gerald, followed by her 4 grandchildren, Anthony, Howard, Ori, and Daniel. Gerald.
First of all, as an honor was given to me to speak on behalf of all of Ida's many nieces and nephews. I think he's off to read. Oh. Auntie Ida was a winter, as were Auntie Helen, Auntie Lily, and finally the boy, our father Marty, who, by the way, was not thrilled with all the hand-me-downs. Obviously, Ida married a Fienberg, and as a result, when you talk about the winters, more often than not, the Fienberg name is included. The majority of Marty and Lil's vacations at various times were spent with Ida and Bill, Lily and Max, Adele and Mickey, Shirley and Pud, and Rose and Bob. And Helen and Uncle Paul lived in California, where they often congregated. They had great stories and lasting memories from those trips. They were all like brothers and sisters. As we all know, Auntie Ida had very high standards and held everyone she cared about to those standards. She held the bar very high. Well, she practically brought me into this world. While my father was in an army hospital in Nova Scotia, recovering from surgery, my mother went into labor. When Auntie Ida rushed her to the hospital and was by my mother's side when she gave birth to me. And in case you haven't noticed, that wasn't an easy task. When my father came home and eventually worked up to strength to go to work, Auntie Ida loaned him $500. $1945, in order to fill up the trunk of his old Willys with auto parts so he could go on the road to support his new family. And I'm reminded, seeing you, of 20 Forest Ridge Drive when the Libman house went up for sale, and Auntie Ida said, "This is the house for you, you have to buy it," and she arranged it all. So, Auntie Ida, thank you for being the glue, for being you, and for being there, and for being there. And by the way, how high is that bar? How about the top rung in heaven?
I'm Anthony. Just want to dispel the notion that just because I had 15 hours to prepare in airports and airplanes yesterday doesn't mean that I'm the best prepared. When I think about what I want to say, I think more about the way I describe Bubie to my children, and I do so in looking at some of the emails that I've received over the last 48 to 72 hours, and including in that bunch, mostly from non-native English speakers. There are some descriptions of Bubie about being a kind and smiling, nice woman, and I just can't help by thinking that was because Bubie didn't speak French. However, she did speak French. She knew one phrase that she repeated often and often, which was "Je t'aime," which means "I love you." And just taking a cue from Gerald is that family was so important to Bubie, and I think that's one of the things that she's transmitted to all of us. Family is the rock that holds us. And I then think about something that was also very important to Bubie, and that was the extended family. So family was not knowing any boundaries when it came to blood. Everybody was included. There was no differentiation. When I think more about Bubie, the other things that come to mind are things that my wife had written to my father, my uncle, just a couple hours before, about Bubie singing, playing piano, the things that she loved. And so when I think about how I'm going to describe Bubie to some of my kids who are too small to remember, it'll be those joyous times about her will to live and to live every moment to its fullest. And of course we're gonna miss her. But I like to close in, sorry for not being so smooth in my speech delivery today. I like to close in the modern way, which is just by saying the phrase that was used by my wife's cousins on their WhatsApp group to communicate to each other when they learned that Bubie had left us, and that is bye-bye, Bubie.
Howard. My wife Marnie and my daughter Sophie, their hearts and our minds are here today, although they were not able to come with me. And actually, I'm going to start there because when we got married, Marnie said to me that of the few benefits that come from marrying me, the family that came with was one of the best things that she could ever have. And to be able to have a Nana and a Bubie, when she lost her grandparents when she was very young, it's extremely important to her. Now, Sophie has only gotten to know Bubie over, mostly with a slightly diminished capacity. She still makes all of the right connections when she is playing and practicing her piano. She makes reference to Bubie Ida. My family was busy planting a sunflower garden yesterday and singing and thinking of her, and that's the way it should be. And it's quite special, and I suppose I think I always knew that. When I was a little kid, one of my neighbor friends, when he met Bubie, was crying at the end of it when he went home and said, "I want a Bubie too." And actually, one of my older friends after college, when he was visiting and spending some time with Bubie as well, he said the same thing. But I'll leave with I think my best anecdote of Bubie. On one of our family trips to Paris, we went to the Parthenon, and Bubie was not really interested in going down the steps into the crypt, and that was not something she was physically up to, so she was just quite happy to sit down on a bench and wait for us while we explored the crypts. When we came back upstairs, Marnie and I, we found her with a group of 20 school kids gathered around her. She'd found 20 Canadian college students who were now on the floor or all around her, enraptured while she was telling them stories, and they were asking her questions and glowing. And I think that really best encapsulates her ability to really touch many people wherever she went, whatever she did. And while, yes, family was most important, I will also note that there were plenty of her friends that I only knew as family until I was an adult. I didn't know any better. I just assumed that so many folks that I was introduced to over the years, including Mary and Norm Davis, that were just my direct family, and I had no notion otherwise until I was an adult. So, thank you.
Worry. one of my earliest memories in Toronto is waking up in the den and looking at the wall of books and listening to Bubie Ida play the piano. And all, through the years, she continued to promote and seek out the arts, and was a lover of symphony and a lover of theater and a lover of books. And many times we just sat together and read. Usually she was reading mystery novels at that point. And when I started writing in college, she was very supportive, and I wrote a poem about aging with her in mind. It's called Mastering an Art. We will have a special award for aging, for rusty faces, bones that grow brittle, and patina-covered hands. Everyone will age as enthusiastically as they can. Some are bound to focus on the amassing of years, but it's not just the most experienced collectors who age best. Also to be considered, it's the light, unpredictable dust of small things lost, and for the true competitor, the accumulation of some heavier sediment. The ceremony will be held on a random day every year. It will go on as long as is necessary for everyone to receive their reward. Over the years, whenever I brought her more writing, she'd say, "Did you write anything else like Mastering an Art? That's what you should be doing. That's what you should be writing." And I wrote it, with her in mind, and I was younger then. I was focused on the physical aspects of aging. But to watch Bubie Ida continue to age was to learn how to age with grace, and to continue to seek out experiences, and continue to go to the symphony, and continue to discuss books with her family, and to be engaged with the world.
I'm Daniel. I write about movies and TV for a living, and every time for 20 years I talked to Bubie Ida, she asked what I was doing and what I was working on, and she would always say, "You're doing what I wish I was doing." And as Ori said, Bubie Ida was the greatest patron of the Toronto Symphony, a patron of the film festival. She went to the Stratford Theatre. So I think Bubie would probably not mind if I do a little name dropping here to start off with. I was talking last week with Carl Reiner, who created the Dick Van Dyke Show, and I was transcribing the interview when my mother called me on Thursday and told me about Bubie. And the passage that I had just transcribed, I had asked him if he had any regrets about any of the things he'd directed, the things he'd written, if he was critical about anything he'd done, and he said that he wasn't critical. He said, "I didn't do so many things that I'm not proud of." And I told him at 94, that's a pretty good way of looking at a life. And he laughed and he said, "I've said a number of times, if I go tomorrow, I've had nothing but fun in life." And that's not literal, it's a mindset. But by that mindset, Bubie Ida had nothing but fun and nothing but family in life. Bubie Ida was the star of every room she was ever in, whether it was a room as big as a symphony hall or a cramped car on a road trip where she'd hear the opening notes of a old standard or an old musical song, and she'd immediately go, I wrote that one. And then she'd launch into a parody of the song that she'd written. My family will always treasure the night that in a crowded Mexican restaurant in San Diego, Bubie Ida just walked over to the piano, which had been temporarily evacuated, and sat down and started playing Solito Lindo. I assume that many of you have similar stories about Bubie, or if you don't, you can get the image in your head of Bubie seeing an empty piano and having it just call to her, and walking over and just happening to know a Mexican mariachi song and performing it perfectly. And you can imagine everyone being initially confused, initially amused, and finally just being caught up in it. To go anywhere with Bubie Ida in Toronto, or really anywhere, was to realize that absolutely everybody was Bubie Ida's family. And in some way, of course, that was literal. Bubie Ida and Zadie Bill and my father Lorne and Uncle Steve had a vast network of siblings and siblings-in-law, kids and grandkids, great-grandkids, nieces, nephews, cousins, of so many degrees and removes that nearly everyone was within Bubie Ida's family embrace. But not content just to dedicating herself to Fienbergs and Winters and Coles and Fosters and more, she picked up families like some people pick up hobbies or tchotchkes, only with much more love and commitment. She and my Zadie were best friends with my mother's parents, with my Bubie Mary and Zadie Norm. Depending on the version of the story, she matched up my Uncle Ian and Aunt Laurie. She was always part of the lives of my mother's extended family, never missing a bar bat mitzvah or weddings until really recent years. And as Howard said, that seemed normal to me, and I only realized thinking back now that it's not normal. You'd go to a simcha without knowing how Bubie Ida fit into the room, and then she'd end up at the Torah with an aliyah, so that was just how she went. She had more lifelong friends than I have casual acquaintances, which speaks to her dedication to people and her dedication to cocktail hour. There was never a time I talked to Bubie Ida, and that goes to, 2 weeks ago, where her social calendar didn't put mine to shame with concerts and events and simchas and bridge games and travel, and yes, in recent years, with the funerals and shivas that come from being in your 100th year. In recent years, her dedicated and loving caregivers were her family too, and they were our family. Bubie Ida had a 100-year standing invitation to be with friends and loved ones, and she always RSVP'd, absolutely, and she always showed up and brought the fun. I'd like, and I'm sure Bubie Ida would love, to end with one of her favorite songs from recent years, and I'm gonna have difficulty getting this out, so I would love for you all to join in, as Bubie Ida most surely would join in. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Anyone want to go on? The other night, dear, as I lay sleeping, I dreamt I held you in my arms. When I awoke, dear, I was mistaken. So I hung my head and I cried. One more. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
Stephen and Joyce, Lauren and Nona, grandchildren Anthony, Magali, Howard and Marnie, Daniel, Ori and Emily. The next generation, Selena, Tiffany, Victoria, Sophie, Juliana, Adam, those who are here and those who are at a distance, but certainly with us at this moment in spirit for sure. And to sisters-in-law, Shirley and Rose, and we remember of blessed memory, Helen and Paul, Lillian and Max, Martin and Lillian, Robert, Pud, Mickey, and just recently passed away Adele of blessed memory, and to her family who just got up from Shiva not long ago. Our condolences. To all of you who are here and share these wonderful memories after these incredibly powerful testimonies that we've heard. Just one thought. There's a Hasidic teaching which says that when one is in mourning, when one is in grief, there are 3 stages. The first is bechiyah, tears, crying, marking the sadness. Second stage, shtika, silence, because there's a sense of loneliness that permeates one's personal space when enduring a difficult loss. But what's the final phase of mourning that stays with you forever? According to the Rebbe, shira, song. And I think that was proved today at this service. It's Ida's song. It's her melody. It's her vitality, her energy, her beauty. All of these things that exemplify her name in Hebrew, Chaya, meaning life. She exemplified life lived to the fullest. A life of meaning, a life of significance. And with God's help, that song, that shira, will stay with you as an ever a non-ending source of comfort and consolation. Just want to share one personal memory that I shared with the family earlier today. And that is, I'm sure many of you have this picture as well, because you were there. When Bill was, a blessed memory, was in his final few years of life at the K Wing of Sunnybrook Hospital, honored as a veteran of war, and enduring disabling illness at that stage of life. You never found him alone. Ida was always there. The smile, the hopeful energy, the vitality, the presence was not only a comfort to Bill, but to all who saw them, because this was love put to action, dedication, a spouse standing by her beloved, even and especially during difficult times. And that's part of the shira, that's part of the song. That's part of the sunshine, that's part of the sense of comfort that Ida leaves behind. May her soul be forever bound up in the bond of everlasting life. Please rise for the memorial prayer.
El malei rachamim, shochein bameromim, hamitzei menucha nechona, al kanfei hashechina, במעלות קדושים, קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע, מה זה את הנשמות חיה בת שיה שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהי מנוחתה Ana bala rachamim, haschirea beseter kenafecha leolamim, utzeror, bitzeror hachayim enishmata, Adonai, ונחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר
God exalted, full of compassion, grant perfect peace beneath your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Ida Fienberg, who has gone to her eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is her portion. May she forever rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Service of interment follows at the Pardes Shalom Cemetery, Beth David section.